The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Let us pray. God of love, in these cold winter months, we steel ourselves against the elements, holding up in the warmth of our homes and offices, bundling up behind scarves and jackets, and we hardly even see our neighbors, let alone see our neighbors as ones whom we are called to love and serve. Yet in these freezing temperatures, we give you thanks for the blessing of shelter, for furnaces that warm us, for coats and blankets. But we are mindful, too, of the many people in this state whose shelters are inadequate or have no shelter at all. We remember those who cannot pay the gas bill, those whose mittens are threadbare, and those whose poorly insulated windows whistle when the wind blows. We cannot be grateful for the ways you provide without remembering those in need. Bring us to their side, O God, that we may be your hands and feet, reaching out to all those who need our help. And we thank you for the privilege of being in this space where we can give voice to those in need, helping to make our state of Minnesota an even better place for all its residents. Grant us wisdom and discernment and a spirit of collaboration in our work. And may this work warm this great state, melting our frozen hearts and our cold divisions, so that we may love our neighbors as you have called us to do. We pray this with hope in our hearts and strength in our hands. Amen.
The chaplain for today is the Reverend Joanne Hejong Lee from House of Hope Presbyterian Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 88th Session, 2013, 7th day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Monday, January 28, 2013.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Representative Albright, for what purpose do you rise?
Point of personal privilege, Mr. Speaker.
State your point of personal privilege.
Mr. Speaker and members, it's my privilege to introduce a class of homeschool students and their parents. The students are juniors and seniors from all over the state here for a two-day intensive class on state government and the legislative process put on by the Minnesota Association of Christian Home Educators. Mr. Speaker, they also wanted me to pass along to you a thank you and to the legislature, particularly for Representative Sandra Erickson, Pat Garofalo, and Carlos Mariani for their help in nearly a 4 years effort to pass the homeschool reporting mandate reduction legislation a couple years ago. They want to let you know it's working well, and they appreciate your leadership. With that, members, please join me in welcoming these dedicated parents and their students.
Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business has been placed on each member's desk. If there is no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading, House File 19.
Second reading.
Second reading, House File 87.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The Chief Clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House Files 214 through 283.
First reading, House Files 214 through 283. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions and resolutions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we'll take action on those motions first. Hearing no objections, the motions prevail.
Pepin moves that House File 95 be recalled from the Committee on State Government Finance and Veterans Affairs and be re-referred to the Committee on Governmental Operations.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is my motion. I'm moving for re-referral to Government Operations for the labor contracts because these contracts have gone through the Government Operations Committee since as far back as we could find, certainly since 1995. Custom and usage shows us that it should go there. It's appropriate to go through this committee. And frankly, this has a big impact on our, a big fiscal impact. The 5 contracts alone have over $250 million, or close to a $250 million effect on the budget. And while our employees are hardworking, and certainly we need to make sure we respect the contract negotiations, it is also our job to make sure that we're asking tough questions and analyzing this. And so, members, I would hope you would support my re-referral. Vote green.
Discussion. Representative Lillie.
Mr. Speaker and members, I'd like to get up and speak against the re-referral. This is kind of fun. I have one of those districts where you never get a chance to really get hazed or anything, so maybe this is my classmates' chance to smack me around a little bit, so it'll be fun. Members, the contracts were heard very much through the summer, and it's very direct process. We heard them in Chairman Johnson's committee, which has not been heard in the past, and they were discussed, and we're happy to discuss them and discuss the bills as they move forward in the State Gov Finance, and we'll have plenty of opportunity once the bills get to the floor as well to hear some dialogue on the matter. So I would speak against the re-referral.
Further discussion. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members, we have before us a discussion about the transfer between committees of a bill that is carrying the ratification of 7 different union agreements. Actually, they are employee agreements. 5 of them are union agreements. 2 of these, actually the MAPE and AFSCME contracts, were under discussion by the Subcommittee on Employer Relations last summer. And as these contracts came before us last summer in August, the committee at that point asked that these contracts be held up and asked the administration to go back and actually discuss the idea or negotiate for some similarities in the contracts to what we see in the private sector. Those similarities were that any increases in wages, in compensation that come forward in these contracts actually be based on performance and have some performance components to them. They did not have the rigorous components of performance that we see in the private sector. They also did not have anything in them about employees sharing in the cost of the increasing, ever-escalating costs of the health care premiums. As you know, in Minnesota state government, every state employee pays 0% on the premium for their individual health care. That means the taxpayers are paying 100% of the premium of the employees. So what we asked last summer was for the administration to go back and renegotiate these contracts. It was interesting because at the time we heard one of the members of the committee actually say, well, you know, usually we just rubber stamp these contracts and bring them through so that they can make their way to the floor. Well, members, just the other day, once again, we had the chair of the committee say, we're just here to rubber stamp these contracts to go through. The word was rubber stamp the union contracts so they can rail on through the process. Well, members, the Government Operations Committee has been a normal stop of this bill back for the last 10 years and then some. It has come before the Government Operations Committee each and every time. But it appears that it may be the majority wants to take these contracts through in a way that doesn't have full public discussion, that doesn't have full analysis. As a matter of fact, members, just the other day in the Subcommittee on Employee Relations meeting, we passed out of that committee these 7 different contracts. We did not understand at the time what the cost of these contracts were going to be in the next biennium. Let me say that again. We passed out of the Subcommittee on Employee Relations these 7 contracts, and at the time we asked what the cost was in the next biennium. The committee and the people advising the committee had not yet organized the information. We did not know how much these additional increases were going to cost the people of Minnesota, but the committee rubber stamped, well, we didn't all rubber stamp, but the committee passed it out anyway. That is the type of effort, members, that we need to put forward so we understand the implications of these contracts going through. There are pieces of these contracts that inherently the Government Operations Committee understands and works with. Members, this committee needs to hear this particular bill. I encourage you to support Representative Pepin's motion.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. In the past, we haven't always had a labor committee, and that's where these were sent for the policy discussion. Both Representative Pepin and Representative Drazkowski, as they spoke on the floor, talked about money issues. That is why these bills are being referred to the state government finance, because those are money issues. The government operation takes care of policy issues, and the policy issues were vetted in both the subcommittee and in the labor committee. Historically, they've gone to here, but that's not required by law, and it's not required by our rules that they go to the Government Operations Committee. And so, therefore, I think that it's going to the proper committee so that the questions about the finances, about the costs, and all that can be fully vetted in the the State Government Finance Committee, which is the finance committee for these bills.
Representative Murphy. Representative Murphy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask first if you could allow or share with the members what their vote means, a green vote and a red vote.
Yeah, so members, a green vote would be to pass the motion and re-refer the bill to the Government Operations Committee. A red vote would be to continue on the course that the committee chose, which is to send it to the State Government Finance Committee. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Chair Nelson, I just wanted to comment on your comments about the proper jurisdiction. And I'm disappointed that you would want to take some of the authority from the Government Operations Committee, because I think it's a very important committee, and it makes me sad that you're wanting to see some of that authority. I also wanted to comment that the DFL actually in 2007 to 2010 had a Labor and Consumer Protection Division, and in neither of these bienniums, the last 2 bienniums, did the labor ratification bills go before this committee, but in fact it was sent to Representative Pawlowski's Government Operations Committee. Members, on the Labor Subcommittee on Monday, or Tuesday or whatever day it was, I have to tell you, it's my first time on that, and on my very first question, I wanted to get some background so I could understand more clearly the contracts and the methodology and how the numbers were arrived at, because this is a near $249 million impact. And as I was asking my first question, I was told that it's not our job to ask questions. I maybe don't have the words exactly right, but the gist of it was, this isn't really our job to ask questions here. There'll be other committees that can ask questions. We're really just supposed to rubber stamp this bill. And members, that's not our job here. Our job is to ask tough questions and look out for all taxpayers of the state and make sure that we're getting the best deal possible. And I understand these contracts are a little different than most of the bills that we discuss here, but we should at least be able to ask questions and have an understanding so we can tell our constituents. And I think it's a big mistake to skip committees. And we've been going through this committee for at least the last 17 years, and I don't know why we would want to skip this committee again. So members, I would really hope that you would support my re-referral and give me a green vote. Thank you.
Representative Lillie.
Mr. Speaker and members, I'm the guilty party that said the rubber stamp comment, and sometimes I forget what business we're in. We're in every word and every statement and everything that we say, and the subcommittee employee relations. Well, let me back up. I want to apologize to my friend, because I would never expect you to be a rubber stamp of anything, and I know that you would never be such. Because that sounds like I'm taking back, and I'm not. My apologies. The committee, we've been through a quite an amazing cycle. This last summer, this subcommittee, which honestly has been kind of in the basement of the state office building or down in here, and quite honestly, last cycle it really became a little bit of a political circus. So unfortunately, I was bringing some of that baggage into the new role as chair, and my apologies. Last session we brought it into room 15, and then someone was running for Congress and they had press conferences, and really when Chair Lanning was leading it, or when Senator Metzen or myself in the past, it really hadn't been political. And these contracts, if you look at the bylaws of the rules of what the subcommittee is actually supposed to be, these contracts are negotiated between the governor and the work groups. And of course these things become passionate. I, as a Democrat and a labor person, would like to see our people treated perhaps different than some of you folks would. I value the work they do and appreciate it, not that you don't, but some of that value that I would say should be measured in payment. And I think that they should have the health care that we all have. And so I'm a little zealous to get this through and get it passed, because I think these folks have waited a long time, and last year it got drawn into a little bit more of a political theater than I certainly wanted or anybody ever intended for this little subcommittee. And it certainly wasn't supposed to stop questioning or have questions, and again, my apologies. But these folks do good work. I don't know if you had a chance. I was coming in today. I'm driving down the road right here in the front, and I'm listening to WCCO. And there was some prison guards, 4 of them, 4 folks in Stillwater. These are these employees, and one of them, 2 of them 4 were beat up, and 2 went to the hospital. Now that's who these folks are. And so I'm sorry if I got a little impassioned, and again, my apologies, but I hope we can move this forward, and I think we are going to have great opportunities for dialogue. Representative Benson has been great with questions in the past, and Representative Pepin, you're going to be carrying forth on that, and certainly Representative Drazkowski has never been shy to ask a question. And I expect him to continue to do that as we go forward too. But I think if you're on State Gov Finance, we're going to have a great. The Chair Murphy, I highly doubt she's going to make the faux pas that I would say, the rubber stamp thing, but because she's much more seasoned and an expertise. But I hope you have an opportunity to ask your questions, and you're going to be well served. Again, I speak against this the motion to re-refer.
Representative Zellers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And not to belabor the point, Representative Lillie, when you're giving a somewhat apology on the House floor, but since Representative Lanning isn't here, he's a member of my class, someone that I actually appointed to be a chair. I think it's insulting to Representative Lanning to call his committee a circus or a political circus. Representative Lanning has had a few decades in public office, and I think in a lot of the time that he's been here, he's tried on both sides of the aisle to run a very efficient, a very effective committee and to be very fair to the members. So to say that he ran a political circus or that it was, now, if you want to rip on the Senate, feel free. I think we'll have bipartisan clapping for you down here. But Representative Lanning was in that committee as well as a number of other members were on that committee. So you don't have to apologize to me. You don't have to say it again. I think you've done enough mea culpaing. But to say that Representative Lanning ran a circus, I think is a little bit insulting to him, and I feel the need to defend my classmate.
Representative Winkler.
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to speak for Representative Lillie, but I think he was probably referring to the circus of Senator Perry's subcommittee on employee relations. And if you don't think that was a circus, I think you should go back and watch the tape. Members, the Government Operations Committee is not supposed to be a committee that is used to delay and obstruct legislation. We spent 7 hours over the last several days talking about the health exchange bill, and Representative Nelson was extremely generous with the minority, talking about finances of the bill, talking about data privacy, talking about the Obamacare in general, all issues that had nothing to do with the committee. We spent 7 hours on it, gave it plenty of time, and it finally moved out. Now we're here today to talk about another bill in order to move it back to government operations to slow things down. The fact is there's an urgency on that health care bill, and it was slowed down in committee. There's an urgency on these employee contracts because we're talking about the last 6 months of the contract. The 2% raise that state workers are going to get, 2% is for only the last 6 months. The health care that Representative Drazkowski talked about, they're giving up $8 million. They're giving up $8 million back to the state in health care savings. Those same workers lost $60 million when state government shut down in 2011. They're not even getting as much of a raise as they lost in compensation when the legislature and the governor failed to keep government operating. So there is an urgency to get this done because these workers have put in the time, they've negotiated in good faith, it's a very modest contract, and to try to send this back to the Government Operations Committee just to slow it down has no value and is disrespectful of those workers. Finally, members, there's nothing in the Government Operations Committee that requires to hear this bill. This has nothing to do with establishing a department, agency, or commission. It doesn't delegate rulemaking, and it doesn't substantially change the organization of a department. There's nothing that I know of in any of those labor contracts that change the organization of any department, agency, board, or commission. So, members, it doesn't need to go there. Delaying this further is just an insult to the workers involved. There have been plenty of hearings. There will be plenty more. It's time to move on. And the Government Operations Committee does not have to be the big black hole into which all legislation falls if Republicans don't like it.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and appreciate those comments. I just wanted to comment on something Representative Winkler just mentioned about the discussions that we've had the last few days on the exchange bill, which I think is one of the most important bills we'll be hearing this session, and I think it's important that we fully vet these bills. And while that may be frustrating if you're in the majority to hear the minority asking a lot of questions, it is our job. And I will point out that last year when the rules were reversed and I chaired the Government Operations Committee, there were several bills that spent several days. Example of photo ID was one where we debated the bill for several days, went off course a little bit perhaps. But you know, that's really our job here. We're supposed to be making sure we're asking the tough questions. And while Representative Winkler is technically right, there's nothing in the rules of the House that say that it's required that this go through. Custom and usage has shown us that we have done it that way. And so I always just take a little exception when we talk about really we're just trying to slow down the process. We're supposed to ask the tough questions and make sure that we're doing our job here. We're not supposed to rubber stamp things. I appreciate your apology, and you're one of the nicest people here, Representative Lillie, and I hold you in high regard, but it is not my job or anybody else's job to rubber stamp something. It is our job to debate the issues, to ask the tough questions. In fact, if we're not asking tough questions, we're not doing our job. So members, I again ask for a green vote.
Further discussion. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, members, I'd echo some of what Representative Pepin said. We need to do our due diligence on these bills. This particular bill, members, again, $250 million impact in the next biennium. And Representative Winkler, you grabbed a piece of the health care savings from the reconfiguration of some of the benefits, but the reality is, and we don't want to litigate it all here today, but the reality is there's additional taxpayer burden well above that. $250 million just for these 7 contracts, about 33%, about a third of which is in the general fund. So members, I encourage you to support Representative Pepin's motion. Let's not be a rubber stamp legislature for these particular contracts. Let's do our due diligence and do exactly what the people of Minnesota sent us here to do. Thank you.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. These contracts are the product of a complete negotiation, and they've been available for public viewing for some time. And they're working their way through the committee process, and we'll have a debate on the floor. There has been time for input. There will be time for input and questions. Members, please vote no.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the motion. The clerk will close the roll. There being 58 ayes, 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. Announcements. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The Rules Committee will meet at 4 o'clock in the basement hearing room.
Further announcements. Representative Murphy.
Mr. Speaker and members, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3 p.m. Monday, February 4th, 2013.
Representative Murphy moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn until 3 p.m. Monday, February 4th, 2013. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion prevails. Representative Murphy.
Mr. Speaker and members, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Murphy moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails and the House stands adjourned until 3 p.m. Monday, February 4th, 2013.